Hello and welcome to our chat with Peter Stewart today. He is a licensed acupuncturist here on St. Croix and just an awesome guy. I've learned so much from Peter in the past years, many years. And I remember being impressed with acupuncture years ago when I was still competing. Yes, I used to compete in track and field. And as you know, in track and field, you're not allowed to take anything for sinuses. I had really bad sinus issues. And I remember Peter doing acupuncture on me, and I swear to God, I drained for like a whole day. I was so mad at him. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to function. And the next day I was fine, and I was good for about a month and a half. And then I did another treatment with him, and I was great for like 6 months. And then one more treatment with him, and I was great for a year. And I really haven't had that kind of sinus issue like I used to have those many years ago since I did acupuncture. So I'm grateful to you, Peter, for what you've done and how you've introduced me to acupuncture. Um, One of the reasons you're on today is because I've been seeing a lot of issues coming up with people wearing masks. And I remember years ago you talked about the heat and the dampness here on the island and some of the issues that it creates in the body, of course in the face. We're seeing it in the face because of having something closed on ourselves. And again, this is in no way saying do not wear a mask. This is just showing you some of the things that pop up as a result of it. So you may want to modify the types of masks you use. So maybe that there's more airflow, etc. So Peter, let's talk about some of the things that, well, first of all, welcome. And let's talk about some of the things that happen here in our climate that you
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and to remind everybody that you and I have known each other for 25 years now.
Oh my God, is it really that long?
That long, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, so this is a good opportunity for me to talk a little bit about Chinese physiology, which a lot of people don't understand. And so let me start there and talk about what causes dampness and heat in the body. And so there's one organ that's responsible for transforming and moving the transportation of fluid in the body. The Chinese call that the spleen. The spleen energy is really instrumental in phlegm production and phlegm movement and all that kind of stuff. And it gets its energy from the kidney. And we think of the kidney as a propane tank. And that's where the energy comes from. So where does the kidney get its energy? Well, there's two places. One, the food we eat. We call that gu qi, G-U-Q-I, gu qi. And also from the air we breathe. We call that yin qi. So if your air is good and your food is good, you produce a lot of energy. So what can cause the spleen not to move this phlegm and cause it to lodge in the sinuses or in the lungs or some other place? Well, we call that spleen deficiency. And there's 4 or 5 food groups that really limit how much the spleen can do. And one of those is cold foods. Now, this is really applicable to the States in the wintertime, where if you're pulling cold water out of the fridge or you're eating frozen ice cream and stuff all day long, you're going to use up your energy warming that food up to body temperature. So think of the stomach as a cooking pot, and whatever you put in the cooking pot, your body has to cook, and that comes from the kidney. So if we're putting cold foods in our cooking pot, it's going to take a long time to heat that up, and it's going to deplete your energy, which the other organs, especially the lung and the spleen, aren't going to get their fair share. So the second one is raw foods. Again, down here in the island, it's a little bit different because we have a lot of natural heat, but in the States, you eat cold and raw foods, your stomach has to cook all that. So it takes a lot of energy. The next one is greasy. Now, we don't think so much of greasy as we think of fried. Now, some kinds of fried is okay fried. Sauteing in olive oil, for example, it's a really good way to fry foods. But if you're deep frying things in vegetable oil, That's going to cause a lot of agglutination in your body. You're not going to be able to move things very well. So cold, raw, greasy, dairy is one. Now, dairy, a lot of people have lactose intolerance. I do, I know my kids do. And so ever since I was, old enough to know what, I haven't had a lot of dairy. In some people, they don't know they have a problem with dairy, so they eat a lot of dairy. And think of all the dairy in our diets, not only milk, but yogurt and cheese and ice cream and all the other things that we have that have dairy in it that causes mucus. And the last one, sweet. Now, what is sweet? In Chinese medical school, we used to say anything sweeter than a fortune cookie. Well, if you've eaten a fortune cookie, it's not very sweet. So we say, okay, anything sweeter than a fortune cookie. But in reality, fruit juices are one of the worst offenders, especially orange juice. And a lot of people start their day off with, they think, a very nutritious drink of orange juice, and they're causing this phlegm accumulation because of that. Any kind of concentrated juice, cranberry juice, lemonade, fruit juice, anything like that. We used to call it red juice when our kids were little. You can get those mixed berry juices in a milk carton. Island Dairies used to make those and all that stuff. Those are terrible. They're full of sugar, and not only added sugar, but concentrated sugar from the fruit. So cold, raw, greasy, dairy, sweet, all those foods contribute to spleen deficiency. Now, what are the symptoms of spleen deficiency? The first one is because the spleen helps hold things in place, like your organs, you could have prolapsed organs. Now, that could mean increased snoring because your oropharynx begins to sag and lose tone. It could mean your muscles lose tone. It could mean blood doesn't stay in the vessels. So spleen deficiency, people bruise easily for no apparent reason. You wake up one day and you got bruises and you go, where did that one come from? That's from spleen deficiency. Also, gaining weight around the middle. That's fluid that's building up. We call it adipose tissue, but in Chinese medicine, it's fluid buildup. Okay. Now, are there other things that cause it besides food? Yes, big time. One is your mental attitude. Now, in 5-element acupuncture, we think of the spleen as being affected by pensiveness. Now, pensiveness means worry. Okay, now in the middle of the pandemic, who isn't worried? My God. So the more you worry, the more you use up spleen energy. The other one is overthinking. So I used to see a lot of students in the States. I was the administrator of a Chinese medical school in Chicago, and I used to see the students for free. And they would come in and they would have terrible spleen deficiency even after the Chinese physiology talk. And I'd say, what have you been doing? Oh, I've been studying like crazy for my herb test. Thinking, overthinking, studying. I call it student syndrome. So you'd see these graduate students with their book over their face laying on the floor, exhausted. And that was student syndrome. That causes spleen deficiency. Now, what about other organs? Well, yeah, the kidney, it supplies energy to the spleen, which supplies energy to do its function. It's affected by fear. And so if you think about the COVID, this whole pandemic, people are scared to death. So now we got overthinking and fear working against us. So if we get comfort food thrown in, lots of sweet foods, fried foods, greasy foods, all those things combined with fear, combined with overthinking or pensiveness, it leads to spleen deficiency. And then we look at the outside environment, and you mentioned that already. We got all kinds of humidity, especially this time of year. This is when most people want to get away from the island because of high humidity, high rain, high temperature. So the humidity's bumping 80% all the time, So those are the main, anyway, those are the main things. And so I see it too. I see people coming in, and I have the ability to feel a pulse. Now, the pulse I feel is on the right hand in the middle position. That's the spleen pulse. If you touch that pulse and you feel something very soft and squishy, you know they have spleen deficiency. Or very deep, you feel this lack of energy. And then you can go to the third one, that's the kidney. Feel that one, it's also deep. That means they have kidney deficiency. Those two organ systems And all the environmental and dietary and thought processes all lead to spleen deficiency, which causes phlegm accumulation. So that's in a nutshell what's going on. Now, the mask itself, does it do that? I think about all the doctors I've known over the years, and I worked in acute care hospitals for 20 years. Those guys, surgeons, be wearing a mask 12 hours a day, but they were in an environmentally controlled environment. They had air conditioning. They had things. There wasn't 80% relative humidity, and it wasn't real hot inside of there. It might be 65. They never ever had a problem with that, So it's more likely what we're seeing is the environment and behaviors that are causing most of the phlegm accumulation, especially in the sinuses, which are part of the lung system in Oriental medicine. So when I see those, then we talk about spleen deficiency, kidney deficiency, and the reasons for that, and then what you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just very interesting. So now, what are some of the, if you don't mind sharing, we look at food as, okay, that can be a trigger, but what are some of the foods that can soften this effect?
Okay, that's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. Think about Chinese food, okay? The real Chinese food. What do they have? Lots and lots of vegetables, especially dark green vegetables. They have bok choy and all those things, and they're steamed. So they're still crunchy, but they're warm. So steamed vegetables, really, really important. Lean protein, fish, pork, chicken, those kinds of things. Very little beef in China, but they also do those other ones. So lean meat, steamed vegetables, and now they eat a lot of white rice, but their level of activity is a lot more than ours. Now, if you go to Hong Kong or some of the bigger cities, there the people look like Americans. They're starting to gain weight. But in the countryside, they're out there working, they're working on rice paddies and all that stuff. They're thin because they use up all those calories. So rice, and I recommend to people here is buy white rice. Brown rice. Get brown rice or black rice or one of the whole grain rices and cook that in your rice cooker or your pot. Then it's got fiber, it digests much more slowly. And so that's what I tell people. Lean meat, steamed vegetables, whole grains. Those would be the best things to eat. And stay away from things that are cold, raw, greasy, dairy, and sweet. What about French fries? What do you suppose of that one? Okay, I'll tell you about potatoes. That's what we call a disaccharide. There's two molecules in the potato, and when you put it in your mouth and you bite on it and the saliva hits it, it turns into a monosaccharide, which is sugar. So that's a sweet food. And then if they fry those in vegetable oil and they put sugar and salt on them to make them more palatable, then they become almost like a poison. So French fries are a big no-no, and it's terrible for your spleen.
So what about like sweet potatoes? Do sweet potatoes fall in that same category?
Sweet potatoes are different now. They've got a lot more fiber. They've got a dark red color, which means they're really high in antioxidants. And as long as you don't fry them in vegetable oil, you're probably okay. So you can steam them or you can bake them, and you can have them with real butter. There's nothing wrong with that. And a little bit of sea salt. You're making me hungry here.
So, you always hear like stuff that cooling foods like cucumbers. So should people have, people do the cucumber water, the pineapple water?
Sure. Now, again, it depends on where you live. If we are in St. Croix and it's real hot and humid, watermelon is a really good food because it helps get rid of excess fluid and it cools the body. Cucumbers the same way. And so those are okay as long as you don't have them 3 meals a day and cool your whole system off or follow it with ice water. You want to be careful not to overdo cold. But cucumber, watermelon, watercress, a lot of those things are really good to have. And you can do those kind of flushes, like you say, a cucumber flush. Celery is a really good one to make a juice from. Low in sugar. It's actually got the right kind of salt in it. That's a kind of a diuretic that controls blood pressure. So celery is a really good one. I always learned in Chinese medical school that the way to cure hypertension is to take 2 pounds of celery, cut it into sections, and throw it in a pot and parboil it until the celery's soft. Then eat all the celery and drink all the juice, and your blood pressure will go down. So it's kind of a quick way if you're going in for an insurance physical and you want to drop your blood pressure, eat celery.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea, exactly right. And we're at a disadvantage down here because we have so many fast food places. It's so easy to get a big bunch of food for not a lot of money, but it's always the wrong kind of food, especially if they include a supersized soda, which is high in sugar, high in everything, and it's ice cold. So you see these people with big diet sodas and they look like they've been drinking big diet sodas. Anyway, but tea is a really good drink to have, warm or cold, especially green tea. So, but black tea is also good. Lots of different types of teas. I've been making a drink for myself that uses guava leaves, cinnamon, lemon, and ginger. And you put that, I've been using an Instapot, and you put those things in an Instapot and cook it for 40 minutes and then let it sit for a while. And it makes a really good digestive aid. And the guava leaves are really good for controlling insulin levels, all kinds of things. So it's a really good bush drink that tastes really good. It's not bitter. So anyway.
So a little shift from our normal bush teas where we do the lemongrass and the, mint, etc.
Sure. Yep.
Good. So now, one of the things that I know that you've worked on and helped so many people with is sometimes we get that thing on our skin where the skin gets lighter, tiene vesicolor, and that you always talked about, that actually comes from damp heat also. So
yeah,
can you talk a little bit on that?
Well, again, because now what controls the skin in Chinese medicine is the lung energy, and it controls also what surrounds you to protect you from the outside environment. So if you want to protect yourself from COVID virus inhalation or from pollens coming off the African dust or whatever, keep your lung energy strong. Now the lung is especially susceptible to sadness. So if someone has grief, it weakens the lung energy. And so, but the lung also gets all of its energy from the kidney. It's part of the network, So if you're having low kidney energy and you're having low spleen energy, the lung is going to suffer too. So a lot of times the phlegm will lodge in the lung. Also, it causes the skin to have issues. So if you have dampness and heat in your body, it's going to erupt onto the skin. So there's a lot of different ways it manifests, but one way to find out is to find yourself an acupuncturist and say, what channel is that on? And we can look, the stomach channel runs down the front of the body, the gallbladder is the side of the body, the lung is down this side, all these different channels in the body. We can tell which organ is affected by where you're getting the predominance of the rash or the change in the skin. Mm-hmm. And again, diet and thought, emotion related, they're all tied together.
Mm-hmm. It makes a difference, doesn't it? So now, for people with Chinese medicine, I know my experience, I love it because I get it that it helps so many things. And I've actually seen it work for pain, where people were in pain and you do Chinese medicine and that pain is gone. And you're like, did you block it? What's going on? So I've seen Chinese medicine used for so many things. You want to share some of the different things that you've seen Chinese medicine used for?
Oh, sure. And I have, I guess, what I would call a general practice. So I see everything from little kids with attention deficit disorders up to the elderly with lots of arthritis pain. And there are points that do just about everything. So I like to tell people acupuncture and oriental medicine are another form of internal medicine. So if somebody comes to me with constipation, there are points I can do on the abdomen, other places that will help. There's one on the arm right on this side, which is the back of the arm, called draining the ditch. And so you can acupuncture that. And I had a patient came back to see me. She came for constipation, said she didn't even make it home. she had to stop at a fast food restaurant to use the restroom. And so I said, "Boy, this guy works," you know. Anyway, so I see a wide range of things. And one thing that I really like to do is work with women with infertility issues. And so there's a lot of things we can do to balance that woman's constitution so she's more receptive to be getting pregnant. And so right now I've got 3 or 4 that came to me to get pregnant that are now getting ready to deliver, you know. And for a while I worked in a hospital in the States in the high-risk pregnancy unit with a couple of OBGYNs. And they had me come on to work with people that were undergoing in vitro fertilization. So I would see them for 3 months, then they would have in vitro, and I would see them before and after the procedure, and it increased their chances by 50%, which is huge, which is why the doctors brought me on. So even with all of the hormones they were giving them, acupuncture increased their chances by 50%. So
I have a godchild because of you.
Oh, there you go.
Helped a friend, and she was able to conceive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I do. I see people with polycystic ovary disease. I see people, lots of different, you know, dysmenorrhea kinds of things. It really helps with menopausal symptoms for people coming in with hot flashes and, you know, terrible flowing periods. Yeah, we have herbs we can use and also acupuncture points that are really, really easy to use. One thing that's really interesting me now is acupuncture ophthalmology. Now, there's such a thing as adult macular degeneration.
Yeah.
There are more and more people now in their 70s and 80s that are losing their sight. Now, in Western medicine, there's no treatment for macular degeneration. There are things they can do to slow it down, but there's nothing they can do to cure it. Well, there's now a guy, he's up in New Jersey, that's using acupuncture to cure macular degeneration. It's so exciting because, and he's using points that anybody who went to Chinese medical school knows those points, but it's just a matter of applying them in the right way. And so I have a patient that was coming to see me. She does have macular degeneration, and she never even mentioned it to me until one day she came in and she said, "You know, after my treatment with you, I can see so much better driving home. I'm amazed. I can take off my glasses." And she said, "My ophthalmologist said it's all in my head," but it's not. Yeah, it actually works, you know, it really works. So there's, like I say, lots of different things. I love to see patients with depression and anxiety. That really works. There are ear points we can use for addictions. Lots and lots of ways you can use acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Right. Now down here, there is a way to use raw herbs. Raw herbs are very expensive and they're very bitter. So I found that patient compliance is not huge. I would rather send them to a bush lady to have them take Caribbean herbs, you know, which you can make more palatable. So I use what are called patent herbs, which are made into pill form. So they take the formula, they freeze dry it, they put it into capsules or pills. And you've seen plenty of those over the years, you know, that I use for my patients. And then you can combine those and increase or decrease the dose to get the effect that you want. So.
Yes, I'm still a diehard yin chow girl.
I'm telling you, yin chow is a miracle. We tried to get, there's several formulas that we use to prevent colds and flu. They were sold out worldwide because of COVID-19. We couldn't get some of those. Blue Earth Dragon is one that's a really good one for bronchitis or pneumonia. We couldn't get that. You know. There's another one called the Jade Windscreen, which helps bolster the lung energy to prevent this stuff. Couldn't get that for months and months and months. It's starting to loosen up now. Yin chow is another one. Honey succulent forsythia formula, which is a yin chow.
Really good.
Couldn't get it. I mean, it was being sucked up from all over the world. People were using that.
I mean, there are 2 staples or 3 staples I always get from you. Yin chow is one, and that you can use before if you feel you're getting something like the beginning stages, take that, it knocks it right out. And I know I use pill cooling for any stomach ailment, stomach ailment.
I always joke and say it's for hangovers.
And that too.
It really works for that. But yeah, pill curing, we used to call it pill curing, C-U-R-I-N-G, but the FDA clamped down on that name because it implied that it might cure something. So now they call it cooling, C-U-L-I-N-G. So
Yeah, yeah.
we all know what it is, though. Yeah.
Yep. And then there's the you sell that cough syrup, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
love.
Yeah, loquat is a fruit that's grown all throughout Southeast Asia, and loquat syrup acts as a real soothing thing for coughs. It's even used for mild asthma cases and lots of sore throats, lots of different things. So in our heyday down here when we still had our big office, we used to sell a ton of that. And parents would come in and they'd buy 3 bottles, one for home, one for grandma's
Yeah.
house, one for preschool. And they'd leave bottles all over the place so they could use that.
Because the best part was there was no alcohol in it, so kids could use it without harm. Yeah.
No alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible, incredible. So, Peter, now, how can people find you? Because after they've heard all this, they're like, I want to see Peter.
Okay, now, we used to have an office in Gallows Bay for the last 15 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And during the COVID shutdown, we decided instead of spending all that money on overhead, we'd just close the office. And Amanda Deering Holmes, who's at Studio 360, had talked to me and offered me to come in there and see some patients. So I started, and I do it 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday. That's at 5 Corners. For me to give the number, 514-8376. 514-8376. So I see patients in the mornings and in the afternoons on Tuesday and Thursday. And it's worked out really, really well. There's a gym there, and Kendall Holmes is the trainer, and so he sees people. They have personal trainers, they have classes, and I have my own space there where I see patients. So it's working out really well, and it's convenient. It's right there at 5 Corners, kind of across where Unamori used to be, the old National Guard building.
Right. Okay, wow. Well, thank you so much, Peter. I think this has been great. Any last words of advice for people out there as they go through this process?
Well, we're at the point now where we have to learn to live with COVID-19. And so I would echo what Dr. Fauci says. Wear a mask. Now, you don't have to wear it 24 hours a day. You don't have to wear it if you're driving by yourself in your car. You can take it off. It's when you're around other people and you're talking face to face and you're protecting them and they're protecting you by wearing a mask. Second thing is social distancing really works. And I'm glad the post office and the stores put little squares on there. You can do that, so you just don't want to get really close up, especially people who have been traveling or have just come to the island. People and you see all the time, probably no problem, but you don't know where they've been too. And hand washing, really, really important. We keep hand sanitizer in our cars, and we squirt if we go to Costules or someplace. Wash your hands, wash your hands. Those are the things we have to do. And then don't do crazy things. Don't go to some place and get up close to people you don't know, or drink a whole bunch and then lose your focus, that kind of stuff. And that's how we're going to get over this thing. And that's what I do. I keep a mask in each car. I keep one at the office. Anybody comes to our door, we put on the mask, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of common sense. It has nothing to do with personal freedom. It has to do with common sense. So people will say, you're taking away my freedom. No, I'm protecting you. You protect me. We'll all be happy together.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for taking the time.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Good.
Great.
And I'll see you at the end of October.
Yes. Yeah, make your appointments now.
Make your appointments now. Okay, good enough.
Great.
All right.
Cool talking with you. Give Carol a hug for me.
I will do that. Yeah.
Take care. Okay. Bye.
All right.